Hi, welcome to the first Fever Presents recording. I'm Dr Andrew Hutchinson, a postdoctoral researcher in energy storage, and I'll be chairing today's session. Today we have a short panel presentation and discussion from some of the subject leads within the Future Electric Vehicle Energy Network Supporting Renewables project, referred to as FEVER, an EPSRC-funded interdisciplinary programme that unites a diverse team of academic scientists, engineers and social scientists across 4 research-led UK universities: Southampton, Sheffield, Surrey and Portsmouth. The aim of the project is to develop and demonstrate an off-grid 100% renewable powered EV charging station, facilitated by an innovative off-vehicle energy store. You can learn more about the project and the project team at www.fever-ev.ac.uk. Fever Presents is a new initiative where we will host webinars relating to EVs and EV charging challenges and opportunities both here in the UK and further afield. This series will comprise a mix of standard and short form presentations, panel discussions, showcase and demo sessions and interviews. Some of these will be live, while others, like this one, will be pre-recorded and shared online via the Fever LinkedIn site. Just search for Fever on LinkedIn and you'll find us. Our presenters and interviewees come from different backgrounds, including academia, industry, policy and third sector organisations, providing a holistic take on the advances being made within the field of EVs and EV charging. So without further ado, on with today's recorded panel session with our FEVER project representatives who sit within 3 of the 4 participating universities. We have Professor Andy Cruden, Principal Investigator of the FEVER project, an electrical engineer by training and now based in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Southampton, where he is also the Associate Dean for Infrastructure. Professor David Stone, Professor of Electrical Engineering in the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering at the University of Sheffield and co-lead for the FEVER project. And Dr Chris Jones, Associate Professor of Applied Psychology in the School of Psychology, Sport and Health Sciences at the University of Portsmouth, and lead for the social science, policy and economics elements of the project. This panel will be structured around 3 key questions. What is FEVER and why is it important? What are the different aspects of the project currently pursuing and what has been learned thus far? And what is next for the project? What are the future challenges and opportunities in this sector? So, starting with the first question, the so what question. Andy, as PI for the project, perhaps you could explain the origins of FEVER and why it is important.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I think there's 3 main points to raise in terms of the genesis and the need for a project like FEVER. I think the first one is a recognition that nationally, the UK needs more electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So that was the first thing. There is a growing new load on our system as we go through the transition to more electric vehicles, and there is a recognised shortage of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that also what's hampering the growth of that EV infrastructure is trying to get the capacity and the connection to the grid. The grid is in large geographical areas quite heavily constrained in terms of its capacity, and it can take a long time, several years, and cost quite a lot of money to achieve that grid connection. So that is not helping our transition from internal combustion engines to new electric. And the third thing, I guess, within that mix is energy security. We have gone through a period of significant rise and then thankfully reduction in energy prices. But we now, I think, as a nation are more aware of some of the impacts of some what seem to be far away geopolitical issues affecting our energy security and pricing. So again, I think it's a combination of those 3 elements that we saw an opportunity to develop a project like FEVER.
Thanks, Andy. Chris and Dave, do you have anything further to
add? From the point of view of the origins of FEVER, I think Andy's covered it quite well. I think the opportunities here are to look at what we can do without providing extra load into the grid. And there is also possible impacts on this outside the UK as well. So we shouldn't just confine the research that we're doing to how it will impact the UK. There's a worldwide implication of this as well.
And yeah, from my perspective, I think one thing that FEVER does really well and I'll touch upon this later on actually, is the range of disciplines which have been brought together in order to progress the development of this innovative charging infrastructure. Not only do we have engineers of different kinds bringing in their expertise in sort of modeling, energy storage, design, and so on, but we do have a real an important presence of computer scientists, economists, psychologists, policy experts in the mix as well. So we're not only looking at the technology design and looking at how it can function and work properly where it's placed, but looking at those more contextually relevant issues as well around, well, how is policy going to affect EV charging infrastructure, the deployment of that infrastructure? How might that bear relation to what we're doing within Fever? Looking at sort of contextually relevant issues in terms of, well, who is going to be impacted potentially by the development of this technology in context, and how can we foster appropriate use of this facility when it is sort of deployed in the real world. So that kind of holistic, I guess, picture that we're pursuing within Fever is something which has excited me and I'm pleased to be a part of.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So moving on to the next question then, it would be good to dive in and learn a bit more about the different elements of the project that are being pursued at each of the different universities and what's been learned so far. What can you tell us about the project? So let's go to Dave first.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Well, Fever project in itself is a number of different universities, as it's been alluded to already. There's ourselves at Sheffield, Southampton leading it, Surrey and Portsmouth as well involved in that. But within those universities, there are also a number of disciplines. For example, there's computer science and electrical engineering, at least in Southampton. There is logistics and electrical engineering at Sheffield, as well as the the Portsmouth and the Surrey aspects. And the project itself is split into a number of work packages covering things from modelling and design methodology, looking at how to hybridize the off-vehicle energy storage, characterization and control of how the whole system will work, the comms and trading aspects, how do you control the energy flow and charge for energy flow or not. Then there's the smart grids, how do vehicles utilize this, what's the logistics involved in that, social acceptance, economics, and actually construction at the very end of it, which is quite an important aspect of a number of demonstrators, which will be sort of led and moving forward. So in terms of concentrating on, I guess, more what we're done Sheffield, we're active across the whole aspect of the project, but kind of more leading on the modeling and the design methodology of what's going on. How do you put a system together? How do you look at what the implications of that system are? We're looking at issues around how vehicles use that system, what implication would it have on for public usage, what implication would it have for usage of fleets, etc. And we're also looking at the demonstrator aspects with a couple of demonstrators, which we'll talk about later, coming out of the work which we're leading on from Sheffield's point of view.
Thanks, Dave. And how about you, Andy?
Okay, I think I mean, support everything that Dave said. I think one of the main things that we've been focused on is if we think of what an off-grid EV charging station could and should be like. We have this renewable energy input, which is variable. We get solar during the day. We get wind possibly 24/7, but clearly it fluctuates, against trying to meet a fairly well-defined, in some instances, electric vehicle load. So if we have particular destination sites that we're looking at putting a fuel station on, again, we can model relatively accurately what we think the load pattern from that EV load is. So we've variable input and a fairly well-defined load. The glue in the middle is one of the areas that we've been focusing on and looking at different forms of electrical energy storage that can capture this renewable whenever it's available and then deliver it when it's needed to the EV chargers. And we've been looking at hybrid forms of energy storage. So not just using, for example, lithium-ion battery technology, which is very good, but can be quite expensive, is currently certainly difficult to recycle fully because there's lots of different small amounts of different elements in a lithium-ion battery that make it difficult to recycle economically. And again, the fire safety of lithium ion is something not to overlook. So what we're looking at is if we have a certain capacity of store we need, how we might split that up into different forms of constituent parts that we bring together as this hybrid. And one of those elements that we're quite keen on is looking at flow batteries, which again allow the capability to have a longer term liquid store of charged electrolyte that again we could tap into as the seasonal profile as well as the daily profile of renewable energy changes. So again, we're very keen on that. Second thing I'd just like to flag before I jump to Chris, sorry, is on the policy side. We have explored a number of and responded to a number of government calls for evidence in this overall electric vehicle energy sphere. And one of the things that has come out quite strongly is the lack of recognition and inclusion of off-grid energy solutions in our current national energy policy. So I think that's something that we are quite keen to push and promote on the behalf of FEVA. Thanks.
Very interesting, Andy. Thank you. On to you, Chris.
Real, thank you. Yeah, so, well, social and economic considerations, policy considerations has been referenced to a core part of the project, which is really encouraging for me as a social scientist. I think what this does is two things importantly. First, it recognises the fact that societal actors in their many different forms, publics, politicians, business leaders, can and do influence the fate of technological research and development in significant ways. For example, public willingness to pay for public charging infrastructure is going to determine your return on investment. And like that's something we should be considering. And equally, sort of policy decisions about EV charging, associated financial incentives or disincentives or what have you, is going to shape whether and where and how quickly charging infrastructure is put in place. And this could have implications for FEVA. So it's nice that we're being included in the conversation. We're a core part of the FEVA project. But also, I think another key bonus here is that having the social considerations being integrated so readily into the project, we're also able to develop the FEVA technology in a more responsible way. So we're making sure that we're being inclusive in terms of the kinds of people we're speaking to, the kinds of voices which are being heard. We're able to sort of feed this into the design decisions which are being taken by our engineers in the project, to making sure that hopefully we're developing a more successful product at the end of the day, and something which is reflective of the wants and desires of society. In terms of the programme of works that we're pursuing at Portsmouth, but also in collaboration with Surrey and to some extent as well Southampton, we're doing a number of things around social policy and economic issues. So one of the first activities we've done so far is a review of the policy environment. This is to understand some of the relevant policies, legislation, regulations, stakeholders which are affecting the context of EV charging in the UK. Our policy team was led by Gareth Giles at Public Policy Southampton. He's produced a comprehensive policy analysis and stakeholder mapping, as well as also organising and hosting a roundtable discussion at Westminster last spring, where we were able to discuss with experts about the policy and regulatory opportunities and barriers around EV charging infrastructure more generally, but also those bearing relation to FEVA. And you can learn more. Actually, there's some details on our web pages as well, where you can learn as to what was discussed at that particular event. Kind of affiliated with that, aligned with that, we've had some co-production workshops. We held one in Sheffield, one in Northampton, with different stakeholder groups, learning more again about these challenges and opportunities facing those who are installing charging infrastructure, but also commercial and public sector and public EV users as well, including fleet operators, and trying to get their perspectives, learning more about their views of EV charging in the UK, again, some of the challenges and opportunities facing them, and also using that as an opportunity to pitch FEVA as a potential solution to some of these issues, and seeing what they think about them. And again, you can learn more about that from our website. In terms of what we're currently doing, most of our focus really is being led by my colleague Mona Chitnis at the University of Surrey. She's an energy economist. A core component of what we're trying to do within the programme as a whole is to understand more about what will determine the cost of EV charging, including that relating to FEVA, and looking at end users' willingness to pay for the service that it will provide. particularly in sort of public roadside destination charging contexts. So they're doing economic modelling. This has clear relevance for the decisions we're making as a team in terms of understanding the economic viability of what we're producing. And this may be important as well as we go forward to try and commercialise the fever technology in the future. Currently, our postdoc Jayshree is actually busy compiling and running a discrete choice survey to aid our understanding of some of the factors which are affecting perceptions of the technology. We also have a PhD student, Tarek, who's doing some work around the marketing policy dynamics of EV charging provision as well. So we're doing a lot of stuff, and it's good to be part of the project, and look forward to the next couple of years where we can, well, I'll talk about this in a moment, sort of really bring home some of the important issues that may affect the fever technology in context.
Thanks for that, Chris. And you've teed me up very nicely for the third and final question, which it would be great to know what's next for the project. So given the direction the project's taking and what you've learned so far, what's next? What do you think might be the future challenges, opportunities that you face? And we'll go straight back to you, Chris.
So yeah, leave on where I left off. Well, yeah, in addition then to the sort of economic modelling, which I just mentioned, I think the future really for my involvement, particularly in the project, is to look at doing some more targeted work around fever in context. So we know that people's attitudes and behaviours vary and differ depending upon how concrete a technology is. That is, you know, people will often be more positive towards a concept in principle than they will a technology in situ and in practice. So it's important that we do some more targeted work around stakeholder opinions, around our intended demonstrator sites, because if we do this in a sort of timely way, then we can feed the information that we're gaining from this activity into some of the decisions which are being made around the design and delivery and rollout of fever in context, and maybe influence where it's placed, but also influence aspects of the user interface and app which come with the technology. As an example, we know that visual impacts, noise relating to wind turbines are often a source of concern for people, to the extent that fever may be driven to some extent by wind turbines. We have to consider public perceptions of the wind turbine technology, particularly in built environments as well, where the sort of technology could be more visible and where sort of hard surfaces can lead to echo and propagation of noise. So actually working alongside our engineers, it should be possible to establish more about the concerns that people have around this aspect of the technology and how that affects acceptance of the technology, and maybe that can feed into more sensitive turbine placement or even selection of turbines, which are going to be less impactful in this regard. Also, I think going forward, one of the key things that I want to do is work with our computer scientists at Southampton in order to look at how the Fever app that will be used to help people navigate and control their use of the infrastructure can be used to promote more cooperative charger behaviour. For example, one of our demonstrator sites potentially is Marwell Zoo. Marwell Zoo is a zoo in the south of England near Winchester, and we could put the fever technology in the car park there. We did some previous work looking at visitor perceptions of fever in this context, and one of the key concerns that we had in this particular survey was around people's reticence to return to their car once it's been charged. So we have a situation here where people might turn up, plug in, disappear off into the zoo, and then, you know, the charges are no longer able to be used by other people who might be turning up as well. So there's a possibility potentially to utilize the Fever app in order to provide push notifications to those who are charging, reminding them of the need to return to their car once it's been charged, or to provide maybe incentives in the terms of like money off vouchers or something like that in order to encourage more cooperative use, or maybe even to provide a forum where people using the chargers can communicate with one another. It's been shown in other studies that this can be a way of actually increasing cooperative behaviour, reducing overstaying and reducing blocking behaviour. So that's something which I would like to look at going forward.
Thanks, Chris. And obviously, you've mentioned we've all mentioned the demonstrators quite a lot throughout. So we'll head over to Dave. What's next in that regard?
Thank you, Andy. Yes, at Sheffield, we're currently leading on 2 of the demonstrator sites. The first follows the Sheffield-led fleet operators co-creation workshop that Chris mentioned, where we've had a large logistics company volunteer to host one of the Fever demonstrator sites, and we're currently following up with a set of questionnaires on how they intend to use it and what the loading will look like. From that, hopefully within the next 12 months, we'll have a demonstrator actually physically built and fitted at that site. Another site that we're looking at is at a hospital. And as Chris alluded to, we're having to do all the analysis on wind turbine flicker and audio noise, as well as how the hospital will use it to look after their fleet of EVs. And that should also be installed within the next 12 months. We've just brought new RA on board to sort of push that forward. So we're hoping that he will manage that quite well. And on top of that, we'll be moving forward with the modelling and dealing with sort of economic advantages and disadvantages of the whole system moving forward. Andy?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, on to Andy.
Okay, well, again, to follow on from that, really the next step for us as demonstrators, it really is moving into proving what we have trying to be promoting in terms of the advantages of an off-grid solution for EV charging. So again, to me, that's the exciting stage. We have a current demonstrator at Southampton at Wide Lane, which is containerized, so it's completely off-grid, but it doesn't currently permit connection to electric vehicles. We're now simulating those vehicles just using a switch bank of resistors, but we are learning an awful lot in terms of how that system could and should have operated, and that's perfectly useful research for us as we then increment towards, for example, possibly the Marwell Zoo demonstrator in the fullness of time. So it really is demonstrating the technology, getting that out there. Fundamentally, though, it's also investigating and trying to demonstrate the cost that we can do it at, because we might have the best technical solution we think we can provide, but if it's going to be too expensive for people to use, frankly, it's not much of a solution to this issue. So cost and analysing the costs, and it's been discussed before, we have colleagues at Surrey who are looking at the economics behind this, as well as the overall team. That is critical to understanding the success, well, potential success of Fever. Two other things that we're looking at, clearly it is a research project. Although we're focused on demonstrators, there's an awful lot that we are learning as we go through this. And as a natural recourse, that research and the learning from it will undoubtedly lead to other future strains of research, whether it is in more evolved forms of hybrid, whether it's looking at different algorithms and methods of controlling the energy that we're storing and coordinating that energy input from renewables to the EV load as well. And again, I think Chris mentioned it earlier, as Dave talked about as well, fleet use and possible networking of this. So again, there's, I think, a lot to come in the future on further research on this as well. But I just want to leave you, really, as focus currently demonstrators, and part of that is we are hoping, we will be taking a stand at the forthcoming All Energy event in May in Glasgow this year, where again we want to actively engage with people. We've done a little bit of that last year. We actually went and demonstrated a system at the Waitrose Farming Conference. This might seem a bit of a strange venue to look at, but again, we got an awful lot of engagement from landowners and farmers who already have embraced renewable energy, but now realise they don't want to sell that into the grid. It would be more profitable for them to be able to make more use of their own energy that they're generating, whether it's in vehicles or for their own use. So again, I think there's a long way to go on looking at the demonstration and the delivery of these systems.
Thank you very much, Andy. And also thanks to Chris and Dave for your contributions throughout the panel discussion today. It's been really great to hear about the Fever programme and how it's developing now that you're roughly at the halfway point of the project. So thanks also to those watching this discussion. If you'd like to learn more about the project, you can visit the project website at www.fever-ev.ac.uk, or feel free to email us on info@fever-ev.ac.uk. Finally, keep your eyes open for forthcoming Fever Presents webinars that will be advertised via our socials and our website. Thank you very much.